Major trends in Jewish mysticism by Gershom G. Scholem. We are continuing the Zohar to the Theosophic Doctrine. It is that which considers evil as the kletpa, or the bark of the cosmic tree, or the shell of the nut as a symbol of the Merkabah, was taken over by the Zohar from the writings of Eliezer of Worms. It is true that some Kabbalists of this school have advanced another theory, according to which evil represents an illegitimate inroad upon the divine realm of light, and that it becomes evil only because something which is good in its rather right place tries to usurp a place for which it is not fitted. Well, we can strive for improvement or more, can't we? Thus, Joseph Gikatilla, who laid great emphasis upon this point, the Zohar, on the other hand, takes an entirely different view. According to its author, evil is indeed something which has its ordained place, but in itself it is dead. It comes to life only because a ray of light, however faint, from the holiness of God falls upon it, or because it is nourished and quickened by the sin of man. By itself it is simply the dead residue of the process of life. A spark of God's life burns even in Samael, the personification of evil. The other, our left side, Samael is left side, also meaning left of God. There are other meanings. I've gone over other variations of the name to put there in the biblical demonology and cosmology of the pentagram rite video. This sinister demonic world of evil, which forms the dark side of everything living and threatens it from within, exercises a peculiar fascination upon the author of the Zohar. A comparison of the very scanty attention paid to these ideas in the Midrash Hanilam and the Embarras de Riches, which confronts us in the parts written later, clearly reveals the progressive influence upon his thought. It is true that these philosophical and Gnostical speculations, including the conception of evil as the remains of the primeval world which existed before God destroyed it, are intermingled with less sophisticated ideas. Thus we read, for instance, that far from being rooted in a theogonic or cosmogonic process, evil is there simply in order to increase man's chances, because God wanted man to be free. He ordained the real existence of evil, that he might prove his moral strength in overcoming it. Part 10. The Kabbalistic view of the nature of man and the essence of sin. Sin is in mistake, from the ancient Egyptian SNN. That's how you would spell it. Is, of course, closely connected with the theory of the soul set out in the Zohar. The intimate connection between cosmogony and psychology in all Gnostical systems is so well known that its appearance in the Zohar is hardly a cause for surprise. In the mystical hymn, Moses ben Nahman has described the birth of the soul in the depth of the divine sphere from where its life streams forth. For the soul, too, is a spark of the divine life and bears in it the life of the divine stages through which it has wandered. These are the words of Nachmanides. From the beginning of time, through eternities, I was among his hidden treasures. From nothing he called me forth, but at the end of time I shall be reclaimed by the King. My life flows from the depth of the spheres which give order and form to the soul. Divine forces build it and nourish it. Then it is preserved in the chambers of the King. He radiated light to bring her forth. In hidden well springs, right and left, the soul descended the ladder of heaven from the primeval pool of Siloam to the garden of the king. The psychology of the Zohar shows a peculiar mixture of two doctrines held by certain schools of medieval philosophy. The first distinguished between the vegetative, the animal, and the rational soul, three stages which Aristotelian doctrine regarded as different faculties of the one soul, while the medieval followers of Plato were inclined to think of them as three different entities. The second, which was generally held by the Arab philosophers and popularized among the Jews by Maimonides, is based on the conception of acquired intellect. According to this view, the rational faculty latent in the mind is actualized in the process of cognition, and thus realization of the intellect is the sole guide to immortality. To this doctrine, the Zohar now gives a Kabbalistic turn. It retains the distinction between three spiritual agencies: Nefesh, or life, Ruach, or spirit, and Neshma, or soul proper, but abandons the idea that they represent three different faculties of the soul. Rather, all three are already latently present in the first. Nefesh and the higher grades correspond to the new and deeper powers which the soul of the devotee acquires through the study of the Torah and through meritorious actions. In particular, Neshama, the holy soul, can be realized only by the perfect devotee, who, for the author of the Zohar, is identical with the Kabbalist, and it is only by penetrating into the mysteries of the Torah, that is to say, through the mystical realization of his cognitive powers, that he acquires it. Neshama is the deepest intuitive power which leads to the secrets of God and the universe. It is, therefore, natural that Neshama is also conceived as a spark of Binah, the divine intellect itself. By acquiring it, the Kabbalist thus realizes something of the divine in his own nature. The various detailed theories concerning the functions, origins, and destinies of the three souls of man are obscure and sometimes contradictory, as well as involved, and it is not my intention here to analyze them, but it is perhaps worth noting that on the whole our author holds the view that only Nefesh, the natural soul given to every man, is capable of sin. Neshama, the divine innermost spark of the soul, is beyond sin. In his Hebrew writings, Moses de Leon actually propounds the question, how is it possible for the soul to suffer in hell, since Neshama is substantially the same as God, and God therefore appears to inflict punishment upon himself? His solution of the problem, which incidentally throws a flood of light on the pantheism at the bottom of his system, is that, in the act of sin, Neshama, the divine element, abandons man, and in its place, an impure spirit from the left side takes up his abode in the soul, who alone suffers the torments of retribution. Neshama itself is not affected, and if it descends to hell, it is only to guide some of the suffering souls up to the light. In the Zohar, too, the punishment of the soul after death is similarly restricted to Nefesh, and in some passages extended to Ruach, but never to Neshama. The story of the soul's fate after death, the reward and punishment of the bliss of the devout, and the torments of the sinner. In short, the eschatology of the soul is the last of the major problems with which the author is concerned. Its connection with the fundamental thoughts of his Theosophy is but loose, but his vivid imagination constantly produces new variations on the theme, whose detailed exemplification fills a considerable part of the Zohar. Taken by and by, the doctrine expounded by the author is fairly consistent. Like all Kabbalists, he teaches the pre-existence of all souls since the beginning of creation. Indeed, he goes so far as to assert that the pre-existent souls were already preformed in their full individuality while they were still hidden in the womb of eternity, since the day when it occurred to God to create the world, and even before it was really created, all the souls of the righteous were hidden in the divine idea, every one in its particular form, When he shaped the world, they were actualized and they stood before him in their various forms in the supreme heights, still in the Sephirotic world, and only then did he place them in a treasure house in the upper paradise. There the souls live in pure celestial garments and enjoy the bliss of the beatific vision. Their progress from the Sephirotic sphere to the paradisical realm, which latter is already outside God, is interpreted as a consequence of the mystical union of the king and the Shekinah. But already in this pre-existent state, there are differences and gradations in the position of the souls. On more than one occasion, we read of the audience given to the soul by God before its descent into a mundane body, and the vow taken by the soul to complete its mission on earth by its pious acts and mystical cognition of God. From its good deeds, mitzvot, nay, from the days on which it has accomplished good, as the poetic description has it, the soul during its earthly stay weaves the mystical garment from which it is destined to wear after death in the lower paradise. This notion of heavenly garments of the souls has a special attraction for the author. Only the souls of the sinners are naked, or at any rate the garment of eternity which they weave in time and out of time has holes. After death, the various parts of the soul, having accomplished their mission, return to their original location. But those which have sinned are brought to court and are purified in the fiery stream of Gehenna. Gehenna is what that stems from, are, in the case of the most shameful sinners, burned. Here the doctrine of transmigration, Gilgul, also plays a part. One encounters it first in the book Bahir, unless it goes back to the literary sources of this work. It is reasonable to assume that the Kabbalist of Provence, who wrote or edited the book Bahir, owe it to the influence of the Catharists, the chief religious force in Provence until 1220 of the Common Era, i.e. during the years which saw the rise of Kabbalism, the Catharist heresy, which was only stamped out after a bloody crusade represented a late and attenuated form of Manichaeism, and as such clung to the doctrine of metempsychosis, which the Church condemned as heretical. It must be kept in mind, however, that to the early Kabbalist, metempsychosis was not the general destiny of the soul, but according to the Zohar, an exception brought about, above all, by offenses against procreation. He who has not obeyed the first commandment of the Torah assumes a new existence and a new bodily abode, be it as a form of punishment or as a chance or restitution. Thus the institution of the levirate is explained by the theory of transmigration. If the dead man's brother marries his widow, he draws back the soul of the deceased husband. He builds it up again, and it becomes a new spirit in a new body. On the other hand, Moses de Leon, unlike other early Kabbalists, seems to have disapproved of the theory of transmigration into non-human forms of existence. Such transmigration is mentioned as a punishment in the case of certain sins by Menahem of Rekanate, 1300 of the Common Era, who quotes several details about it from the modern Kabbalists. However, the conception of metempsychosis is, as a general form of divine retribution, is not unknown to the early Kabbalistic tradition. The fundamental contradiction between the ideas of punishment in hell and of metempsychosis, two forms of retribution, which in the strict sense are mutually exclusive, is blurred in the Zohar by the limitation of the idea of punishment proper to the process of torment in hell. Taken altogether, the spiritual outlook of the Zohar might well be defined as a mixture of Theosophic theology, mythical cosmogony, and mystical psychology and anthropology. God, the universe, and the soul do not lead separate lives, each on its own plane. Well, you can say that God is where nothing else is, as this thing, but nothing else can escape God, The original act of creation, in fact, knows nothing of such clear-cut division, which, as we have seen, was the cosmic fruit of human sin. The close interrelation of all three, which you find in the Zohar, is also characteristic of all latter Kabbalism. Reference to the one often shades off imperceptibly in the talk of the other. Later Kabbalists have sometimes tried to deal separately with them, but as far as the Zohar is concerned, its fascinating appeal to the mind is to a large extent bound up with its unique combination of three elements into a colorful, though not unproblematic whole. Now, one of the things that we find when looking at claims of reincarnation, not only among the Israelites and the later Jews, which aren't necessarily the same group if you're going to talk about ancestry, but we find, okay, the idea of reincarnation appearing, but whether we're talking India or other areas, this sort of thing really varies. We find that, sometimes there's the idea that you still have to go to hell. You just, when you're done with hell, you reincarnate. And the general view, as far as from religious tradition rather than just popular speculation, is that reincarnation is hell. Hell on earth, that's here. We're supposed to try to make it better, and if we succeed in that, then we don't have to come back. But have I ever encountered anything that makes reincarnation necessary to explain stuff? No. Continuing with the notes here. Gotta find them, right? Note 17, Haggadah 15b has Hanichu Lezkan Za Sharawi La Shitmash Bakbadudi. The verb hashtmash in the whole of this literature is a fixed term for undertaking theurgical practices. Ashtamash Batka is explained already in the Aboth de Rabbi Nathan as signifying to make magical use of the name of God, Yahweh. And one of the things that we find is it's not only the other names of God, but everything linguistically is a formula. And it's, of course, magic is the art and science of religion, so everything in the revealed scriptures are what claims to be, and the inspired teachings can likewise be worked out. Note 18, the first used in Tovsta Megillah 4, editor Zucker Mendel, page 228. And Megillah 24b, the Munich manuscript already reads, Herba Tzpu Lamer Kaba Wala Rao Auta. Minihum in the Hekaloth tracts, mention is always made of the Piet Hamerkaba instead of Kabud. One also finds the term Gawa. 18, probably in the Agadath Shir Hashirim, editor Schechter, page 13. Hurrah, Autu, Chidrim, Shibrum, page 13. Note 20 regards a passage in the Midrash, Tanhuma, 171a, Ra, Hakab, Hey, Wat. Chudri, Hamurkaba has been drawn to my attention by Saul Lieberman. Of still more antique appearance is the formulation of an Agada on Simeon ben Azai, Akaba's collaborator in the Merkabah studies, of which the oldest text is found in Leviticus Rabbah par 16:4. Here he is asked, Amru liyah, Shema Bachdri, Hamar Kaba, Ata Asuk. This reading, instead of the corrupted Shudri Merkabah in the prince, is borne out not only by the parallel in the Shir Hashirim Rabbah 110, but according to Lieberman, by the good manuscript of Leviticus Rabbah, investigated by him. 21, Oxford Manuscript, 1531, folio 39b, Merkabah Shoma, folio 6b, Alafaresh, Akyaba, Bauta, Shah, Shaliti, Bauta, Shah, Lamerkaba, Nati, Seaman, Bumbuout, Shul, Rukya, Uter, Mum, Buout, Shul, Biti, Shal Yati, Lamerkaba, Yutzta, But Kol, Mut Chut, Kasa, Hakbud. The names of the archons, which must be known in the ascent, which is later mentioned first, or on the note for 22, are, according to chapter 22, editor Jelinek, 399, is different from those which one must know in descending. 23 regards this interpretation given by Bloch, Ginsburg, and Abelson. I regret to say I cannot share. Nowhere in all the text is there ever any suggestion that the visionary himself drives in the Merkabah as though in a chariot. Well, in a way, our bodies, and I mean more than physical, are such. But anyways, it is true that during the ascent from the 6th to the 7th palace, there is a very vivid description of the way in which the celestial traveler passes the gatekeepers in a chariot of radiance. Karun Shul Naga, on his way to the higher sphere, but this chariot has nothing to do with the Merkabah. Also, the verb yarad is not employed in this context. Of the existence of a heretical gnosis of a dualistic and antinomian character on the outskirts of Judaism, there cannot be any doubt, to my mind. Surely these Gnostics, and not the Jewish Christians, are the target of some of the numerous references to minim in the older rabbinical literature, on which, since the appearance of Gratz's Gnosticismus and Judentum, 1846, so many scholars have lavished a profusion of thought. I do not propose to dwell on this controversy, which, like the voluminous literature on the subject of the Essenes, has become the happy hunting ground of those who delight in hypothesis. Any reader can inform himself from the works of such writers as M. Friedlander, der Wortchristlich, Judith Nastikismus, 1898, die religiösen Bewegungen innerhalb des Judentums im Zeitalter Jesu, 1905, because you don't say J, you say Y, right? Joel Blick in die Regionsgeschichte Religionsgeschichte 1880 of the Common Era. A. Buchler in Judaica Feistriff Führer Hermann Cohen, 1912, and the same in MGWJ, volume 76, 1932, page 412 to 456. Note 25 regards the most remarkable evidence of the author's strictly halakhic attitude is the very detailed description, chapter 18 of the Greater Hakaloth, of the procedure by which the adepts recall their master, Nehuniah ben Hakana, from his ecstasy to a normal frame of mind. Incidentally, certain unusual expressions and ways of spelling in this piece are manifestly of Palestinian origin. 26. This is confirmed by a response of Sherira Ga'an. Outzer Hagaunim Lemus Hagiga Shulk Hut Shubut, page 12, and by one of the Hai Ga'an in Shu Tau Hagaunim, editor like, number 31. Note 27, manuscript Casanatense 179, folio 109, Oxford 1785, folio 281, British Museum 822, F 270 to 273. I have found another fragment of the text in the Taylor Schechter collection from the Geniza at Cambridge, K1 84. Note 28 is this is proved by F. Bowles' remarks on the history of chiromancy in the Greco-Roman period. Catalogus Codicum Astrologicorum, volume 7, page 236 to 237. Note 29 refers to Gemblicus de Vita Pythagorica, chapter 17. 30, Yabamoth 120a is an interpretation given by Abeya. The term Hekrut Panim occurs also in the response quoted in note 26. Harkavi has questioned its authenticity. Zikron Lareshonim, volume 4, page 28, and again in Ha Kadem, is it Qadem, volume 3. You can't tell when you're having the same letter for two letters, right? 1912, page 198. His argument may be dismissed. He had, of course, no knowledge of the fact that a fragment of this old Hekrut Panim still exists. 31. Answer zur Frage nach dem Ursprung des Gnosticismus. (1897), page 9 through 58. 32, particularly in chapters 15 to 23 of the Greater Hakaloth. 33, the same. 14, Outzer Hagaunim Lemus Hagiga Udalit, Ein Bait, Chulk, Hutshubut, 34. The Folklore of China, Denny's The Folklore of China, page 60, quoted by Otto Stoll, suggestion un Hypnotismus in der Volker Psychologie, 1904, page 49 and 50, note 35. Barakoth, 34b, and Abodah Zara, 17a. 36. Merkabah Shulma, folio 1b, the bottom. Shlah